Welcome to Northwest Tech Show. I'm Dave Duncan, and this is the show where we talk about technology and about how a better understanding of technology can lead to better tech decisions and usages at home, at work, and in our civic engagement. We're going to start things off, as we like to do, with a clip from the good folks at twit.tv.
This is Twit. First up, with the pace of news these days, I wouldn't fault you for possibly forgetting about that groundbreaking revelation from last year involving Facebook, your data, the election, and a company many may have never heard of prior to the blow-up, Cambridge Analytica. But the battle for our data, of course, rages on. In fact, Netflix is debuting a new documentary at the Sundance Film Festival. I believe they showed this last week, called The Great Hack, and it walks viewers through the scandal. And among those featured in the film is our guest, David Carroll, a media professor at the Parsons School of Design in New York, who has been intimately involved in seeking justice through the British court system in the name of protecting privacy for voters and possibly for you. Welcome to the show, David.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is awesome to have you here. We really appreciate you taking the time. So why don't we start with kind of where this all began? Why don't you walk us through how you got involved in a legal battle with Cambridge Analytica in the first place and why?
Sure. So I'm a former tech entrepreneur myself. I had my shot at trying to make it big with data, and I definitely had that moment back in 2013-14 where we connected Facebook to our app and realized we could not only see the user's data, but all of their friends' data. It felt really weird. When the startup went bust, like most do, I felt enabled and empowered to kind of speak the things that I had seen while learning how the sausage was made. I also teach where students go into this industry. So my former students work at companies like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Apple, media companies, ad tech companies. And so it's always been my job to figure out how this industry works. And during the primary season, I was interested in how the campaigns were using advertising technology in new ways. And the Cruz campaign was particularly aggressive in data collection. And that's when Cambridge Analytica first got on my radar. After the election, I was encouraged by a Swiss researcher to do what's called the subject access request, try to request our data, because the hypothesis was it was processed in the United Kingdom where we would have data rights. And so in January of 2017, I did the request. I received some data in March. And published that to Twitter and got some advice that it was probably not legal. And that's when I got myself a solicitor, which I didn't know what a solicitor was before all this. And we started to look at the legal challenges. And there's lots to say about that. But needless to say, our original hypothesis was true. U.S. voter data was processed in the United Kingdom.
And requesting that through the UK, like from what I understood and from what I read, if you heard back that they were unwilling to give you that information, that would tell you one side of the story, that it was isolated in the US. If they offered to give you something, which in essence they gave you what you called a summary, then you knew that there was some data transported over there, and that gave you a lot more strength for this case that you're going through now.
That's exactly right. Ironically, if the campaign had not used a British company and our data had stayed in the United States, we would have no rights to ask for it or address anything about it.
So Wired called what you're doing to get your data a quest. They called it a quest that was epically nerdy. Did you have any concerns or any idea that it was going to be this big when you started? Was this something that you knew was going to have all these ripples?
When I first got the data back in March of 2017, I definitely had a visceral response that it felt big, but I didn't know exactly why or how. And then ever since then, it's been finding evidence that our anxiety around this is justified and our concerns about this are warranted. The part of the quest has been, trying to achieve what the law allows for, and that's full disclosure, and then to understand the story about this and what it teaches us. So what is the teachable moment of this scandal? How is it going to inform both the industry and policy and democracy moving forward? So I think a lot is now to be learned about talking to lawmakers as they consider new privacy legislation and other things about how it affects our perception of our own democracy, which is really nicely depicted in the movie The Great Hack.
Do you think, I mean, I imagine your answer is yes, but that the U.S. needs reform in this matter? It's kind of disappointing from the U.S. perspective that you actually had to kind of cross your fingers and hope that it could go in the direction, that the data would be overseas in order to do anything about this. Do you think reform is around the corner? And are you in, I don't know, emboldened by what you're seeing as far as like this kind of tech reckoning that seems to be pointing us in that direction?
Yeah, I never expected Cambridge Analytica to be a household name around the world. So it started out a very nerdy thing.
Yeah.
But the reaction to it shows the anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. A lot of people don't know why they're upset about Cambridge Analytica, but they are upset. And I'm figuring out exactly why. The California Consumer Privacy Act is a good example of how this has influenced U.S. lawmaking. One of the key things in the California law that comes into effect in the summer of 2020 is that people get rights to ask for the data that companies have on us. This is a sort of cornerstone of the European model and is the key thing that I realized the U.S. needs to grant what's called the right of access. You should be able to ask any company and organization to hand over the personal data they have over you. Currently, that's not a requirement, and it seems to me a fundamental privacy right that Americans need to demand. And we have figured this out after the Cambridge Analytica catastrophe.
So you said that as a professor, you teach a lot of students who go on to work at these big companies, Facebook, Apple, Google, or at least aspire to. Do you get the feeling that that this comes as what you're talking about, these ideas that companies should take better care of our data and also hand it over, that it really belongs to us? Is that something they come into your classes already understanding or not?
What's interesting is I teach a class called Dark Data where we really cover this stuff, and my students are very international. My university is one of the most diverse in terms of international students. And so we have to look at not just the US model, but the EU model, but also what's happening in India and especially China. And when you take a global view of how sort of there are at least 4 different models of privacy in the world, and how they're different and how they are contrasting each other, this gives you a sense of sort of how the internet is splintering. And so it's important perspective to see the big picture. And I think what's great is we have these important conversations where I have students from China debating the so-called Sesame social credit system with students from the US and students from all over the world. And I think really having this international conversation about these issues is really what's important. And it influences their way of seeing things when they go in to work for these companies, which these companies are operating internationally as well.
Your students are lucky to have you. I mean, being so close to all of this Cambridge Analytica stuff that's going on, and then to be able to pass that knowledge on to them and answer questions, they're super lucky to have you. Last month, SCL Elections, which formerly Cambridge Analytica, pleaded guilty in the case and faced penalties. Although it should be, I mean, it was pretty obvious to me, and I'm sure it was to you too, that the penalties in the grand scheme of things were pretty paltry. What was your take on that?
So that prosecution happened in January, and that was the regulator, the information commissioner, prosecuting them for failing to obey the order to disclose all my data. And the weird thing about it is they publicly, the administrators of the defunct companies said that they were going to plead not guilty. But then surprisingly, at the last minute, they pleaded guilty, to everyone's surprise. And what's weird about that is that they then took on court fees, legal fees, et cetera, and costs. And if their primary motivation is to work for the creditors and the court and the former employees, why did they incur all these extra costs? It doesn't make sense in the case of bankruptcy and insolvency. And one of the things that we're sort of figuring out now is, do we have rights as data creditors, meaning they owe us outstanding data, just like there are companies that are owed outstanding money? So there's really interesting legal precedents being set. And the story's not over, even though a lot of people think it is.
Well, so tell us about the Netflix documentary, The Great Hack, that premiered at Sundance.
I was the first time I had ever seen it, so it blew my mind. I think people are going to really enjoy it. It tells the story in an interesting way. It follows my story and the story of Brittany Kaiser. Brittany Kaiser is sort of one of the lesser known whistleblowers. She worked at Cambridge Analytica really up to the end. And she's a very interesting character. Whistleblowers are very complicated people, of course. The other interesting thing about the film is it uses visual effects and motion graphics and graphics to tell the story and make what's an invisible world visible. And so I think a lot of people are going to go into the movie and have a much clearer understanding of the industry. I think that companies like Facebook and Google are going to be alarmed by how we so clearly explain their business model. Mm-hmm. And they've really appreciated the fact that their business model has been hard to understand. And the filmmakers have done such a good job of explaining it and then showing the risks to society accordingly.
Does it also follow the story of Christopher Wiley? Because that's the whistleblower that most people have heard of.
Yes, Christopher Wiley is featured in the movie, but he did not sit for interviews. And I think we'll figure out why that's the case later on with other movies that come out later. Wink, nudge, nudge.
Part 2. Dun, dun, dun. Well, I mean, and that's a really great point, right? Like, this story is not over. March 18th, 2019 is kind of the next step in the evolution of this case. What happens then?
Yeah, so March 18th is the sort of civil trial. It's really me as the plaintiff against the administrators, the defendants, and that's where we're really challenging the attempt to liquidate the companies. And do we have rights as data creditors? Can this company get away with liquidating without answering to its obligations? And so it's really where privacy law bumps up against bankruptcy law. Are we going to allow bad guys to just go out of business when they get caught?
Yeah, absolutely. I think overall, what's super inspiring to me in all of this is that you're kind of proving, you know, the adage that one person can make a difference, right? Like, one person can decide to step up and kind of challenge this this behemoth, seemingly a behemoth. And then, you know, this has been a long journey for you, but you've made it work. And you know, obviously there's a documentary to kind of show the machinations of that behind the scenes. What do you want people to learn from this? Like, from watching what you've done from Cambridge Analytica, maybe more from a broader sense, like how are you able to pull it off where other people feel kind of helpless?
I think the big lesson to learn is data rights are the new civil rights. It's a fundamental human rights issue, and I think the awareness of these things are helping people realize what that really means. And it also shows that when we do have the data rights laws, that it is possible to protect your rights, and there are data cops on the beat looking for data crimes, and there are lawyers out there who want to defend data rights. And so there's a general feeling of helplessness. There's nothing we can do. We're just resigned to being screwed over. But that's not true, especially when countries grant citizens rights to their own data.
Yeah, absolutely. David Carroll, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Do we have a date as far as when the Netflix documentary is available to everyone to watch, or is it just sometime this year?
I think they have a huge pressure to get it out as soon as possible.
I'm sure.
And but also they want to end it as definitively as possible. So I empathize with Netflix and the filmmakers, because they want to get it out, but they also want to end it in a satisfying way. So I would say, I estimate sometime in the late spring would make sense to me.
Right on. Well, I can't wait to watch it. David Carroll, thank you so much for hopping on. If people want to find you online and kind of follow your work and follow the story through you, how would you suggest they do that?
I'm very active on Twitter, and I often post updates to the case right there for everyone to see.
Awesome. And that's at Prof. Carroll, Prof for Professor, of course. David, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and best of luck with this case.
Thank you for having me. Great to share the story.
And you're listening to Northwest Tech Show on KMUZ. That was a Creative Commons clip from the good folks at twit.tv. That was Tech News Weekly 69, The Great Hack, with David Carroll talking about some of the goings-on in the Cambridge Analytical hack, that where a lot of information about individuals on Facebook and, possibly election swinging bits of information were being released to third parties that supposedly weren't supposed to have access to it. So that was, that's going to be coming out in some information about that will be in a documentary called The Great Hack, probably coming out sometime this year, and all sorts of good information there. I liked him talking a little bit about data rights as civil rights. We've talked a lot about how you could be hosed by the abuse of your data. Both collecting it, having it be inaccurate, having it brought out of context. It can really cause a lot of problems for you in your individual life when someone can just beat you over the head with selective pieces of your past and maybe not even correct. And in general, we don't even have our own idea of our own past that's as sharp and clear as maybe a digital footprint someplace. So even if something was slightly, things could be attributed to us that could have been things we said, but we didn't actually. But even we're not sure we didn't accidentally say them out of context. So, lots to chew on here. And kind of the international aspect, where we have something because it went through, part of the data was being brought through the UK, where that has much more stringent data privacy and rights to your data kind of laws, that, it kind of gave them a foothold to lodge a complaint. At the same time that the companies know all this stuff is extremely valuable, where the general public is generally expected to behave as if it has no value at all, and that you have no standing when it when it gets lost. They'll give you a year of fraud protection or something on your credit line, and that's about it. Let's see. But they mentioned Christopher Wiley, just to kind of refresh on that. He was a Canadian data consultant who, for a while, worked at Cambridge Analytica, and he released a cache of documents in last year, prompting the data scandal. Gave the Guardian newspaper documents that describe the secret workings behind Cambridge Analytica. Private data from 87 million Facebook user accounts obtained for the purpose of creating targeted political campaigns for the 2016 U.S. presidential election. The campaigns were based on the psychological and personality profiles mined from the Facebook data, which Wiley had commissioned in a mass data scraping exercise. So there was even a lot of scandal about what actually happened, because at the same time, as a marketing thing, obviously, these guys are running around saying that, based on what things you say you like, and who you associate with and all that, they can, form a very precise personality profile of what they call the ocean traits, the openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, that sort of thing.
This is why, Duncan, I actively create a me that's not me online as my social media presence.
You like monster truck rallies and all sorts of things.
Exactly. It's like whatever they're getting from me, it's totally the wrong demographic.
Yeah. So,
and my friends know otherwise.
Sure. But the thing is, are they drawing the conclusion you hope that they draw? Because they could say, "Oh, this guy's thrown up smog. He must be real paranoid."
Well, I think that they might be able. I mean, it's going to depend on how crafty I am, right, and how smart their algorithm is.
Well, and it's also about what does the real data look like versus what do you think it looks like. So if they have, this is the demon of having these monster training sets. What their value is when someone has seen, all the password leaks or something, they can make a very good password guesser. When someone's, seen all the data that's leaked about us, they can make very good analysis of what's authentically, a trait showing, that you're pregnant or something like that, like in their shopping data or whatever, has happened several times very notoriously where, someone's, this one girl's father, and I think it was in England, found out that his daughter was pregnant because she started getting, mailers for baby products and things like that. And it was because of some innocuous purchases she'd made, and they used their data correlation to say, oh, when people suddenly start buying these kinds of vitamins, it means they're pregnant.
Right. Well, I mean, it's better to ask the question based on the fact that there's barbecue sauce and ice cream in their shopping buggy than based on what they're wearing, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I'm just saying.
Facebook wants to know what you're wearing. I don't know. I was.
Well, it'll look at the pictures.
Say, right. Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's
right.
my point. Just like the cars.
Going with that for a second.
I mean, it's like that awkward moment when something's happened, somebody's put on weight, and they're like, "Oh, you must be pregnant." No. But I can tell you, I mean, this is why I like driving the old cars, because they don't send off too many signals. The new ones, they're going to have all kinds of like
black boxes,
weight sensors, like in the seats, and they're going to like communicate.
They know
with you.
how often you drive alone, yeah.
And that, and then like the Fitbit will be integrated, so it's like, I'm sorry, John, I can't drive you today.
You really need to walk it off.
That's right. It's like, yeah, this is a mess.
Can I go to the movie later? Maybe.
And then
don't eat too big a lunch.
The problem is the car's going to get behind you, and then it's going to push you along and make you run. Yeah. That's right. It's going to become your nemesis.
It's like Christine, except she's a nanny or something.
Exactly.
Oh man. Well, I look forward to seeing how this settles out, because this case in particular is one of the ones, every once in a while, people get away with stuff, and they get away with stuff, and they get away with stuff, and then as soon as they've kind of gotten comfortable with, like, no matter what I do, I'll get away with it, that's when something comes out and it really catches the public consciousness, and it really offends at a level like, I want to punish this person.
That's right.
I'm not going to let this go.
It's like when the founder of Facebook killed a goat with his own hands and then tried to feed it to the CEO of Twitter.
Like, what's the symbology here? What are we doing?
Well, this was the awkward moment, which is kind of like, dude, I don't understand this. I don't know if you're trying to poison me. I don't know if you're trying to prove something to me. I don't know.
Has this ended a death match of some sort?
It's like... But did you hear about that story?
I brought you here to hunt you, Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, let's see. I'm looking forward to the documentary, if nothing else, for the infographics, which allegedly make clear Facebook's business model. So
it has always been exploit the people, exploit their stuff.
Yeah, but how?
Well,
this will show how. This will be like, this will connect the dots.
Yeah.
So
and then people won't care anyway, because they're like, well, my nanny is on Facebook, and that's how I have to communicate.
I don't know. I've seen a huge uptick in the people I know that just like, oh, I just, I'm on Facebook. I just don't look at it anymore. If people stop. I mean, I think Facebook messages are still pretty strong, because that's really been one of the big things about Facebook. Kind of looking back and what we had before is Facebook was the first really big place where you could find almost anybody. It's kind of become the new phone book, as everyone's gone to cell phones and all the numbers and names have dropped out of the city directories. There was a kind of a period there where, you couldn't find somebody unless you basically had to call a friend of a friend of a friend or something. Right. It's like, do you have his number?
But think about this. You're old enough to remember AIM, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is Facebook messaging really any different than AIM?
Yes, because that used handles. So it was a great way to communicate with people you knew, but it wasn't a great place to find people that you knew.
And you can find people that you knew through the messaging app, or do you do that through
Facebook? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's looked into the same thing.
No, I mean, well, let me say this. I mean, the way that I use Facebook messaging, and maybe this is just my low adoption speed, but I really don't use Facebook messaging any differently than I did with AIM. I mean, I have maybe like 10 or fewer like really good friends that I communicate with on a regular basis, and I do have business associates, which are somewhere around 100 or so.
Yeah.
And I do a fair amount of communication through text, through emails, and through messaging. But the only reason I currently use Facebook Messenger, and I took it off my phone, was simply because AIM doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
well, and I agree. I mean, my usage is not very dissimilar to yours. I would note that on those circumstances, those incidents where I need to get in touch with someone that I haven't previously had any sort of phone or text relationship with, but I know them from the station or from something else.
Right.
It's like, oh, I'll look them up on Facebook, or I know someone who's friends with them, so I'll look on their friend list and I'll find their profile that way, and then I can send them a message.
But my experience is that message, if you're not already a friend with them, just goes into this purgatory folder that they never check anyway.
That used to be the case, but it's gotten better at figuring out what is junk and what isn't junk, because I've been able to reach people that I haven't previously corresponded with. And at the same time, I've seen no, jump up in spammers, getting to me.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe it's just that I have my privacy settings higher than most people do or something, because I think I have it set so you can't even, message me unless you're already friends with me or something like that. But, and there's an exception when you send something out, then that person can reply to it, then that's handy too. So, I've a lot of times Facebook introduced someone. I have 2 people that are on my friends list. They're not friends with each other, but they need to communicate on something. Fine, I send them both a message, and now they're on a thread together and they can communicate, even though they wouldn't otherwise be able to reach each other.
Right.
So, anyway, that's been a thing, and I'm kind of looking for the replacement. In some ways, cell phones, smartphones have slowly improved their messaging, but it's still pretty good. Like the Apple iMessage is pretty good, and a lot of people are on that. So that's one way, at least a lot. And maybe it's dependent on the kind of circles you're in. I noticed a lot of my friends tend to have iPhones. So
that's because they're sophisticated, Duncan.
I wasn't going to go there. No, I mean, well, it's clannish, right? You tend to adapt the things that your friends are doing, or vice versa. And so it would make sense that, if you're an iPhone user, maybe your friends with the people you hang out with would tend to be iPhone users. I don't want to really get into what that type is. Yeah. But for my part, it's like I've just gotten tired of, the spamminess and how much malware I would have to deal with on Android. And that's why I went to iPhone. It's just like it doesn't do as much, but what it does pretty well, and I don't have problems with it crashing.
That's why I went to BSD, and that's the same reason that Apple uses BSD as its base.
Yep, as its fundamental base, yeah, or via Next Step. Yeah. All right, well, that's why we like and dislike our social media companies, I guess, is what we come to at the end of that. We got to communicate. That's a fundamental human thing, right? So well, in some ways, Apple's tried to fill this role. It's kind of because it's been such a void of people based on this principle. But, we just need a major player out there that designs things with privacy in mind.
Moving on. Moving on. Nothing to see here, people.
All right. Well, let's move on to another kind of a more fun application of social networks. Coming from a rather unexpected spot. Fortnite. Fortnite is a game that was originally kind of a fighting zombies and building defenses against them kind of game. So you're kind of looking over the shoulder of your character and watching him build stuff and watching him shoot zombies and whatever. At some point, I'm unclear on why they did this, but they added a battle royale mode that you could fight with other people until only one person is surviving. With other people that just happen to be online, it would just match you up and drop you on this island, and you'd be running around and you'd be picking up guns and building ramps and going and shelters and shooting from cover and all sorts of crazy stuff. But also done a little bit lighthearted with, as I say, you might be running around in a bunny suit or something while you're doing all these things. So it's pretty hilarious to watch. It's been very popular as a Twitch stream to see really good players going at this. And someone kind of came to the point of view, it's like, why is this so popular? It started off, well, gosh, I can't even tell you what platform it started out on, but it's on everything now. There's Windows clients, it's on Xbox, it's on PlayStation, it's on iOS. You can get it on your iPad or whatever. So it's just everywhere, and all the different platforms they can play against each other. So, and there is at least on the Xbox and probably on some of the others, there's headset options where, you're broken up into like 4-person squads, and you're trying to be the last squad out of 100 people to survive on this island. And as time passes, there's like this poison gas or something that closes in from the sides, and so you get forced into a smaller and smaller area over time, so you can't just hide out and avoid combat. It's you get pressed into a smaller area until eventually you're in a firefight. So it's pretty fun. And someone was observing, hey, maybe the really killer feature of this thing, and what's got other places worried is the possibilities this has for being a little more social. Because right now you can talk on headsets, but maybe there's more you can do. So let's check this out. This is from twit.tv. This Week in Google 494, talking about, starting off talking about a concert that happened in Fortnite.
This is Twit. How about this? Fortnite had 10 million concurrent players during Marshmello's concert event.
Which means so nothing to me.
That should mean something to you. Fortnite is a phenomenon, but I think the more important point is it goes beyond
Fortnite,
a popular game.
Wait, was he doing a
Marshmello's
concert?
a DJ who wears a marshmallow head.
Did he do the concert in
Fortnite?
But aren't you supposed to try to kill people during the concert? Is that what?
I don't know about that part.
I'm
Remember
sorry.
in Second Life that people would do things, they would have events. In fact, there was one country that had an embassy in Second Life, which I thought was really stupid. But they'd have concerts, but it was very limited. What's interesting is, as far as we know, there have never been more than, say, 8 million concurrent players in Fortnite. So this is a significant number. But it's also, so people would go to the concert. I don't know if they were killing people. I don't know.
But that's the point.
No,
Someone
but
in the
that's
chat
see.
room,
This is my
Marston?
point. This is my point. It is becoming a social network, and I know this is true when I see teenagers socialize in Fortnite, and because there's lobby, right? You don't have to be in the in-game stuff. There's lobbies, and I think Facebook's biggest threat is not Snapchat and its ilk. It's Fortnite. Netflix already said their biggest threat is not HBO or Amazon. It's Fortnite.
But haven't we always seen these games that take over the world? I mean, flying crazy birds was going to take over the world and the economy, and then people get bored with it.
Yeah, Pokemon
They have
Go.
a half-life.
Yeah. The difference is in this one, first of all, numbers, but also it's a space. It's a place people can hang out. None of these other games were social, or as social anyway. People talk to each other in Fortnite. You have headsets. You can talk. I don't know. Maybe it's just me as an old man not understanding what the kids are doing.
Kids are doing today.
But I honestly think Fortnite has, just from the teenagers I know who are obsessed, has more than just, it's more than just a game. It's certainly the esports, champion at this point. By the way, Marshmello wearing his marshmallow head because he's a DJ, and the ninja.
You don't have to wear a marshmallow head because you're a DJ.
Well, yeah, I guess you could wear it around the rest of the time too, but Dead
You got
Mouse,
an excuse if you're a DJ, Stacey.
Anyway,
you don't have an
you have an
excuse.
excuse.
There are DJs that don't wear funny hats.
Excuse me,
or
why are
heads.
you wearing a marshmallow? Well, I'm a DJ. Oh, okay. He and Ninja won the big Fortnite charity tournament. So he's a good Fortnite player as well as a DJ. I don't know. Somebody in the chat room says you're overselling this.
I just put a link in the doc, not for discussion right now because it's a very long article, but you'd be wise to read it. It does a really good analysis of exactly what you're talking about.
And what do they say?
They say that Fortnite's longevity will hinge on its ability to evolve and to be a social
clearly.
network.
Yes.
Yep.
Actually, the title of the article, which is in Redef at redef.com, is Fortnite is the future, but probably not for the reasons you think. They come to the same conclusion I do, I think, which is not about revenue numbers or whatever, but they say business models hyped, cross-platforms hyped, popularity's hyped, but there is an opportunity in Fortnite because of the social network. And, of course, it will really come down to this is what happened with Pokemon Go and Crazy, Flappy Bird and all the other. Those were just what they were. And actually, I think Nintendo and Niantic missed a bet with Pokemon Go by not evolving it fast enough.
Well, what on the other hand, Leo, Zynga, Facebook, games, Fake Hay,
Farmville.
right? There were tons of games on Facebook, and in the long run,
didn't do anything.
Oh, it did it for a while.
What was that music service that you could do? Was it Turntable FM? What was it you got on?
Yeah, but they got in trouble because they didn't have a license for the music.
Oh, okay.
That was another problem entirely.
I loved that service. I
loved it too, and it was social because you were the DJ.
DJ with your friends. Yeah.
Okay. I think though, when we talk about, obviously something's going to come along to replace Google and Facebook. It's hard to imagine that right now because they're so dominant.
And it may be decades.
And it may be decades.
Or it may already be here.
And it may already be here. Honestly, it may. And I think if you're going to get a threat, it's going to be something that is kind of orthogonal. It's not going to be, they just made a better Facebook or they just made a better
that's how all the good threats are.
Right.
I feel like we're being like, to win this game, the team needs to score more points.
The only way to win.
Microsoft tried to fight all the last battles, right?
Right.
Google has a search engine. We have to have a search engine. Google has this. We have to have this.
Right.
The winner comes around with something new.
Fortnite.
The same with regulators. Regulators keep on thinking, the search engine is too powerful. Well, there's other things. Google's a mobile company now. You missed the bet.
And you're listening to Northwest Tech Show on KMUZ. That was a Creative Commons clip from the good folks at twit.tv. This week in Google 494 Fortnite Jam. I'm Dave Duncan, joined by Nate Darnell. And so I was reading up some sort of supplementary information about this Marshmallow concert. And apparently, when leading up to the game or the concert, when you'd go into the game, instead of the normal arena options, you'd just have showtime. And you'd go onto a server, which I think has a maximum of 100 people per instance of the game. You would show up there, and there'd be a countdown, and then all the weapons disappeared. So you didn't have to worry about people shooting you up. And before that, when you did get shot, you just respawned in the same place. So one of the features that was kind of fun with the game is one of the button combinations makes you do these different dance routines. And so, in the music thing, that synchronized really well with kind of Fortnite's signature dance move stuff. And there's all this dance stuff going on. And apparently at some point, Marshmallow yells out to the crowd for everyone to jump, and everyone jumps at the same time. And so that was kind of fun to see. And then they turned off gravity, and so people floated up into the air and did all sorts of crazy things. So they really shaped an experience. And Epic, the game company that put out Fortnite, has had some experience with this because they've organized in the past the game into what they call seasons. I think they're on season 7 now. And each one represents some major change or some event that has happened that changes the landscape of the island. Like a meteor is struck, kind of a cosmic cube from another dimension showed up. For a while, there was animated snowmen or something that were running around and throwing snowballs at people. I missed that one, but I checked it out this morning, and all of a sudden they're planes. You know, you can jump in a plane and fly around and shoot down balloons and all sorts of mad stuff. So they're always giving some novelty, and they are shaping experience in a way sort of like a movie director shapes an experience or a book author does. So this is, I think, kind of a new art medium. And they apparently know how to do it. So that's a major feather in their cap and very promising for kind of as orchestrated social experiences in the future.
Is this like that movie that we saw on behalf of the Tech Show? What was that one? That was a Steven Spielberg movie?
Ready Player One.
Ready Player One.
Yeah. It's a little bit like that, yeah. You know, instead of the race to the egg being a side thing, that's just, you know, another season pass event or something. So
right.
Yeah. Very much so. That was that also, I think, had a little bit of the flavor of Fortnite. In that case, it was because everyone was there as some character from some game, movie, book, comic. But, you know, kind of the same thing, kind of that oddball vibe where everyone has some really outrageous appearance, and there's this kind of constant party vibe going on, as well as the combat aspect.
Right.
And you know, a little just a smidge of cartoony, right? So, yeah. So it is, yeah. Fortnite Player One. That'd be good. That'd be a great season. That'd be a good special event. I would love to see them do like a you know, cinema special or something where everyone, instead of getting a random costume, they get a random character from the movies. You know, like for Halloween, everyone shows up as, you know, Jason or a Pumpkinhead or something, you know, just like some weird thing.
I don't need to touch that stuff. All right. That's it.
All right. Well, should we, anything in here? You're not a big fan of VR and stuff, and I guess this kind of touches on that a little bit.
Well, I would say that I'm like a fan of like flight simulators.
Yeah.
But I'm not a fan of people replacing their real lives with virtual reality. Like I think that's my biggest contention with modern systems, Duncan. I see no problem with using virtual reality for specific things. I see a problem when they use it as a retreat for handling, you know, real circumstances.
When you talk to someone on the phone, is that a real conversation, or is it just like it doesn't count unless you're in person?
So it's a really good question. And I mean, it's what I would say is that for me, there's no replacement for meeting someone face to face, like in a business context.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, I don't mind if after we've established a working relationship that in a business context, that we're communicating largely by email or telephone, but I still want to have face-to-face meetings. The reason for that is I can detect when we're sitting down together more nuances about their character than I can ever get through a simple telephone call or a text message or an email.
I got to say, though, for keeping in touch with people that otherwise would just basically be, you know, maybe someone you really like, but they'd just be out of your life, you know, otherwise because they've, you know, moved to, you know, another country or another state.
But in that particular case, you've already met them, you've already experienced them, and now you're using technology as a way to maintain that relationship.
Right.
You're not meeting people through technology first and then discovering who they are as people after the fact.
Well, that's an interesting thought, because I know a lot of people that wound up getting married that way. They, you know, they met first through, like, say, a text board or something.
Right.
You know, and then they met. You know, it is definitely a continuum. I guess the question to me is what the shape of that continuum is for different people. It's like usually, I mean, if you're healthy, it's like 100% is the you know, meeting in person and talking live. I think that's always going to be the best.
Right. Well, I think that the younger generations are going to do things online that previous generations just like weren't even like, it wasn't even on their radar.
Well, it's like the slowly crept in the etiquette of, you know, people not calling each other. It's just like, oh, you just text. You just text because calling is rude. You might be they might be doing something, you know.
Well, and from the other side, texting is, you know, a way for people to control the conversation because they just don't have to reply.
That's right.
You know,
That's
so
right.
it goes both ways. I
So
mean,
you can't have a difficult conversation over text. It just never works.
No, because
the person who wants to disengage, you can't tell if are they driving or did they
this
just.
this is precisely why I force them to sit down with me so we can walk through those awkward conversations, and I can watch how they interact when they're under pressure.
Judge them. Judge them fiercely.
That's correct. And this is precisely why I need to sit in front of them.
Every day is an audition to stay Nate's friend.
That's correct. And then they're welcome to fire back.
Right, right.
And the accuracy of their shot, you know, will determine whether or not
engage me socially, bro.
whether or not I respect them. You know, because if you back down,
you're free to say whatever you want, and I'm free to have contempt for you for it.
That's right. But
there you go.
More than anything, I know whether or not in that exchange, whether or not they have the courage and the skill to stand their ground, you know, and to be able to have a conversation back and forth, or whether or not they just shut down or run for the hills. And it's like, look, I'm involved in a lot of business relationships and teams that are high-pressure teams. I can't have somebody just getting offended by something or not having the courage, you know, and then you just stop communicating and run away. Exactly. It's like, I don't take prisoners, dude. You're getting kicked off the team. I mean...
No surrender. Batman.
Don't make me get out the Batman voice. You know?
Well, I think that's a good segue. And given that we're here in the last 5-6 minutes, I had a really nice note from someone that was kind of intrigued by my mention of makerspaces on previous weeks.
Clearly, they didn't have the conversation with me.
No.
They were like, I tried showing it to Nate, but you know, he was really like just unapproachable.
Is he always so intense? It's like, yeah. What do you mean? Yeah, of course.
That's how he is.
What do you mean? So, makerspaces is when we were trying to come up with a mission statement for what our makerspace would be, one of the things we came across was the concept of third space, which is someplace that's not home and it's not work. You know, and a lot of people, it's a coffee shop. You know, they go there, you know, maybe they'll meet friends, maybe they'll sit on their laptop and, you know, work on stuff, but it's just something where they can be productive and, you know, just be away from home stress or work stress. And so, you know, what's the makerspace? Well, it is what I like to call it, my funnest description of it is it's a collaborative mad scientist garage, you know, where you can come to work on projects, you know, for fun, for self-improvement and education, for art. Maybe it's something, you know, you think you could spin up into a business or something you use at work or home. That would be very helpful. You know, like, oh, I'm, you know, going camping and so I need a really good camping stool. And rather than buying something boring, I'm going to make my own off of some neat plans I saw on the internet, plus maybe I'll make my own tweaks to it. I've got some ideas, and you go to a makerspace with that. And ideally, the first off, it has to be, you know, physical space. And that was, you know, we've been meeting for almost a year in the over in like a pub, you know, Salem Ale Works. We've been having monthly social meetings just to kind of to do talks and to kind of touch base on things we've been working on. And, you know, also kind of to share the progress we had on doing all the, you know, kind of working our way through the paperwork and financing and stuff to make this happen. And the people that I'm starting this with, co-founders, were not, you know, experienced at starting businesses. So, you know, we were doing a lot of stuff that was kind of research mode that would be basic stuff for someone who had done a lot of businesses and done a lot of commercial rentals and things like that. But it was new for us. We didn't want to, you know, learn by making expensive mistakes, and so we were doing lots of research and, you know, picking brains from a lot of people that were nearby. Even before I met my co-founders, I'd visited a lot of maker spaces in Seattle and one in New York and one in Eugene and one in Bend, and more recently DIY Cave, just to kind of see what they're like. And almost you have to go to one to kind of get a full sense of what it is. And also you need to go to several to kind of get a sense of how they vary. Like My first experience was going to 3 makerspaces in Seattle, and it was very much a Three Bears kind of situation where I went to one and it was just a big room and they had a tweet switch, so every time you turned on the lights it would send out a Twitter message saying that the lab is open and people who didn't have keys could then show up. And it was just some racks full of yarn and supplies and some power tools like you'd have in your garage, and it was very basic. Really cool people, and they were doing a lot of different things there, but the space itself was pretty much just a conventional room. And then I went to one that was very polished and lots of blue lights, and they had Tron Renaissance playing on loop on all the TVs, and it was just littered with 3D printers and just visual noise out the inn. So it was just very, very extreme. And that one was open to the public and didn't have just memberships. A lot of times these are memberships based with occasional open houses, and to bring in new members and to cross-pollinate with other similar like-minded groups. But that one was a bit much. And then the third one I went to was kind of really fit into what I would call the mad scientist garage. So I arrive at the place, and there's a bunch of people working on, they're building their own filters and nozzles on a water pump, and they're trying to get what's called a laminar flow of water stream to go over the warehouse. And so laminar flow is when water is all moving at the same speed, and so it doesn't break the surface tension of the stream. So you don't have spray going all over. It's almost like the water equivalent of lasers, everything going in the same direction. Although it's arcing, of course, with gravity. It's not like anti-gravity or something, but it's not misting. It's just a solid stream. And you'll see that out of your tap. You'll see at certain settings it comes out smooth, and at some it just kind of blasts and splashes all over the place. So they were working on that, and then the next thing I found, I went inside, and there was this white tree-like structure that apparently was made out of baked salt. And what that was is they put one of those lightning generator globes, and they put it into a mineral bath, and where the lightning went, it cooked the thing solid. And so they just washed everything away, and what was left was this tree-looking structure that was literally the preservation of where the lightning had flowed. Then I went into the main room, and they had this workbench, and just walls were covered with tools and projects, and there was this big black disc, obsidian disc, set up vertically on a workbench about 3 foot across. And I'm like, what the heck is that thing? They said, oh, that's the infrared sensor off a Russian attack helicopter. And I was just like, oh, I'm home. This is what I was hoping it would be. And they were pumping music and stuff like that. And they had a quiet room where you could go to read and work on electronics projects and things like that. So they were playing with liquid oxygen and freezing gloves and things just to see how things would break when they're frozen, or liquid nitrogen or whatever. So that's kind of what it can be. That's what it can be. Now we're looking locally for something a little more less extreme than that. It's going to be something that reflects what local users want it to be. So we're starting with a space, and a lot of us have tools at home. We just don't have space to use them, or maybe we have projects and we don't have all the expertise we need to have to finish it. And when you're around other people that each have deep knowledge in different areas, then you find that you can fill the holes in each other's, the gaps in each other's knowledge about how to complete your project. So someone will come over and see what you're working on and say, oh, you need a charging system on that. I actually can show you how to build one. It's like, oh, cool. And boom, you maybe a couple hours later, you leave with a finished project on something that you figured might take you a couple months. So that's, I don't know if that helps. I'm going to be having a discussion with someone later individually kind of about their progress on this space. But yeah, again, it looks like we found a space that we're going to be using with Merit out next to the Center 50 Plus Center. And, we're still putting that together. But, there's several different ways that can work out, but I think they're all pretty good. So I'm feeling pretty optimistic about this at some point. And we're going to we're going to have pretty soon. We'll have open doors where people can just come and see what a makerspace looks like, and that'll be great. Worst case is, if we don't permanently lodge there, it's going to be a great location, at least for the next 18 months, as a place that we can have events, for reasonable price. So that's what we're looking forward to. And with that, you've done it again. You spent an hour talking with David and Nate about technology and about how better understanding of it can help you accomplish things and defend yourself at work, at home, and in your civic engagements. I hope you'll join us to continue this conversation next Wednesday and every Wednesday, noon to 1 o'clock, for Northwest Tech Show.